guys, and welcome back to the Tim Sports Talk. And today we got another Talking with the Enemy. We got the Saints this week, so we have Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Glad to be here with you. Love the energy coming into the show. I want to match it with you. You know what I'm saying? I want to be there with you. So I appreciate you having me on, man. I appreciate being here.
Of course, as soon as we get started, my dog comes in with her squeaky toy. That's just exactly perfect timing. I've been sitting here for an hour and a half, and she hasn't squeaked it once, and we're doing this. But no, thank you for the compliment on the energy. Yeah, a lot of people say that. You know, I have fun with it. Passion. Gotta have
How
it.
lucky are we that this is what we get to do this? You know what I mean? Like, you gotta be excited about it.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, let's see who's here already. We got DRG in the chat. What's up? Spoil AFib Gaming is our resident Saints fan. He's been here for a while, so yep, he knows all about it. I'm so mad at him and your Saints for losing to the Giants, but we'll get into that. Madison, what's up? Jessica, how's it going? What up, Yuki? All right, guys. So, first off, we just got some questions for Mr. Ross here. How did you become a Saints fan?
Oh, man. All right, look, it was simple, right? I was born and raised in Louisiana. That's all it took. You know what I'm saying? Like, born and raised in New Orleans, that's all it took. You know, you're born down there, and it's funny because usually, you know, you're born and then they put, you know, a nice little onesie on you and everything like that. Now you come out with the Saints onesie in New Orleans.
you come out with the Saints onesie.
So, you know,
nice.
it was born and bred, man. Born and bred.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm right there with you with the like 20 minutes away from the stadium from FedEx Field. Yeah. So, Yep, I'm right there with you. Home field. Our home team, and my dad apparently has a story of like apparently I was trying to be a bandwagon of like the greatest show on turf and stuff like that, and he was like, "No, you're gonna be a Washington football team fan, and you're gonna love it, all right." And then 20 years later, and we've sucked ever since. So, but I do love it. I'm here. I'm a glutton for punishment. What can I say?
Hey, for a long time it was that way for us too, man. Don't you worry.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right. Do you have any background in football or any other sports? Just curious.
Yeah. So I grew up playing football. Again, born in Louisiana. So you either play in a sport or you're a loser. Great writer. You know, or a loser. That's fine too. That's fine too. So I came in. I played safety and wide receiver throughout my time. Had to stop. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was about 15 years old. Had to have that scooped out. So I'm good now. Everything's fine. I got a dope scar back here. I'm not going to show up, but I got a dope scar that people ask me about all the time and stuff like that. And so, it was one of those things where once that happened, I kept trying to figure out, okay, how is it that I was going to stay in sports, even though I couldn't play sports? I went out. I had a full decade-long career in live theater, touring around the country, doing Broadway, off-Broadway touring shows, regional theater shows, and then got back into sports media about a couple of years ago and everything. And so that's how I got into to coverage. But yeah, it all started with being on the football field. So
fair enough. There you go. And that was good, leading into my next question. How did your channel get started? And I was watching your video today, and I heard that you're apparently a part of a Locked On network. So is there a team, like a guy for every team, or guy or girl for every team out there?
Yeah. So I also work as the partnerships manager and then the channel coordinator for both the NFL and college. We have NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, and college that are all covered. Okay. So we cover all of the major professional teams and then dozens of the college teams. We ain't gonna cover all the college teams, y'all. I'm sorry, it's not gonna happen.
You don't know about my Rockford University? I mean, come on, dude.
I was just about to say there ain't gonna be no Locked On ODU or nothing like that. We're not coming through with all that. But we have a whole bunch going on over on the college network and stuff like that. So yes, we have a huge coverage there. So I started writing for a website that we actually started, just a blog for. It was called All Saints Considered, and then NPR got really mad at us for using the All Blank Considered moniker, so we had to change it to Section 600. Okay. And then I ended up getting picked up over at Locked On because I was doing some solo shows out there. So I've been covering the Saints for the Locked On Podcast Network since about 2017.
Awesome. Good to know. All right. Sweet. All right. Fair enough. Here's just some random, you could call it a jab or something. I just think it's funny. Do you believe the Saints are the least lucky team that's actually good? With all the shenanigans that has happened.
I mean, it's wild because I want to say maybe behind the Packers. Because the Packers have really gone through it in the playoffs since 2011 or whatever. They've really gone through it in the playoffs. But the Saints have gone through it in the playoffs too. And you have a star wide receiver that's having all this trouble and, legs and lack of surgery and all this other stuff. But he's Gucci now. And then they get a suspended defensive tackle to open up the season. and then you open up the season and it's like, oh, by the way, everyone's injured. So like it's not the greatest luck, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I will say that it feels like they faced a lot of adversity. They've done a good job facing adversity over the past few years, but Drew Brees was a huge part of that equation and everything, even though Drew Brees himself was a part of that bad luck in a couple of stints as well, having to play 9 games without him and everything. And so, I think that it has been better for New Orleans, but I think that they're in a really unique situation to where they've continued to have to battle through this adversity. It's part of the fabric of the organization at this point, dating all the way back to Katrina, now sort of repeating with Ida and all these other things that have been going on. So yeah, not the greatest luck, that's for sure. I'll say it that way.
Fair enough. As I said, it was more of a jab and to all the stuff that's going on. But hey, I'm right there with 20 some odd years of nothing. My whole life. I'm 28. Last time we won was 29 years ago, 30 years ago.
Dang, so, I was going to say you came right off the tail of it. Dang.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm right there with you. All right, here we go. So let's go ahead and go over the overview of the Saints. You touched on a few things here, but first off, I have to ask you about this because I thought it was one of the most fascinating things that I've seen is this crazy cap situation you guys are in. Negative $100 million in cap space. And then your GM's over there, or book guy, whatever you want to call him, is doing some voodoo nonsense of just hiding numbers. How in the world did that get fixed in your mind? I still don't understand the whole thing. I don't know if you do, but how did it get through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what it was a lot of contract restructuring. That was a big part of it. They also set up some mechanisms already to be able to cut loose from some players. For instance, they traded for Quan Alexander, who had a non-guaranteed cap moving forward behind, from that year moving forward. So they ended up moving on from him, which saved them $13 million. And then they re-signed him in an incentive-laden deal for up to $3 million, might come in less than that, basically vet minimum. So they saved up to about $12 to $11 million just on cutting and returning the same player. So there's a lot of those types of mechanisms. They did have to move on from the middle of their roster quite a bit. Janoris Jenkins was actually at the top of their roster. He was the starter opposite Marshawn Lattimore. He was a big loss for them. Emmanuel Sanders was a big loss for them. But outside of that, it was a lot of role players. It was, not re-signing some guys that they drafted, things like that. So that was a big part of it. The other part of it was restructuring contracts. So we saw them restructure deals for guys like Teron Armstead and Marcus.
Which is basically kicking money down the road? Is that the whole idea?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So they took whatever their base salary was for that season. Let's go with Marshawn Lattimore, for instance, who was on his 5th-year option, which put him just over $10 million. So let's just say $10 million. So they took his $10 million base salary, reduced it all the way down to the vet minimum, which for him was about $1.075 million. And then they took that remaining $9.925 million and then turned it into a signing bonus and spread that cap hit out over 5 years. So basically it's like taking 5 quarters and then instead of paying $1.25, you're paying 25 cents a year is basically the way that they broke it out. And so they ended up just stretching everything out so that a portion of that counted against the salary cap in addition with the new base salary, but then everything else kind of spread out. Then they extended him anyway, so it didn't even matter. They just put money right on top of that. So
you're screwed for the future is what you're saying, but then you're going to do some more voodoo magic stuff to get through it again. Okay.
This is the thing. I have heard for years and years and years so far that, it's all going to catch up with the New Orleans Saints. And this was supposed to be the year because the COVID situation happened and they put the ceiling on the cap or the floor on the cap, but then it still dropped and all this other stuff. And so this was supposed to be the year. And look, when we were going into the offseason and I'm covering this team and I'm saying this is a team that is $100 million over the salary cap, but watch them figure it out. There was still a small percentage of me that was like, they ain't gonna figure this out. But they figured it out. But they got it. And that was a very, very small percentage because I've covered Mickey Loomis, I've covered Kai Harley, these guys that have been doing all of this cap magic for so long. And they'll figure it out. And I'll tell you right now, they're about $30 million over the cap for next season with less than 40 players signed to the roster. So they'll have to do more cap magic because next year there's a ceiling, not a floor on the salary cap. So it's going to be challenging for them again coming out of this season and into next. And they don't have a full-on quarterback on the roster for next season, right? It's just Ian Book, who they drafted in the 4th round this year, who, hey, could be the guy, who knows. But if it's going to be Jameis Winston, they're going to have to sign him to another contract. If it's going to be Taysom Hill, they're going to have to sign him to another contract, or they're going to have to go out and find somebody.
Yeah, speaking of weird, more contracts, I don't know, that Taysom Hill thing, paid him 30-something million a year, but then none of it was guaranteed, so it's all fake and like it's like a weird thing. I don't understand.
So basically what happens. So this is what happens when you sign a player and then you put a bunch of void years on the backside of it.
Yeah.
What you can do is that you can take the signing bonus and then spread it out over those years, even though they don't actually exist, and then they just sit on your books for that long. So it's just about the accounting more than it is about the money spent. But what they'll do is that you still have to affix a number on those years. And what happens is that if you are about to, let's say, extend that player within a year, you can't negotiate higher than whatever that number is. So that's why they put those numbers very high. They did the same thing for Jameis Winston's contract. He's got voidable years. Tron Armstead, same thing. He's got voidable years. Marshawn Lattimore, before they extended him, same thing when they restructured it. They have to put a big number in there, even though it's fake, because you can't go above that. So if they were to say, okay, we're going to do it, but we're just going to put a $5 million hold number on those, then you couldn't negotiate a contract above $5 million per year if you were going to extend them within 12 months.
And him being a quarterback, you had to throw it real high, because if he did all of a sudden become your number one quarterback, he ain't going to take $15 million a year.
That's
something
exactly
like that.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right.
That actually does make sense. All right, fair enough. All right, more stuff on your offseason. Of course, Drew Brees retires, and in comes Jameis Winston. How did you like Jameis going into the season? Not so far what you've seen, but going into it, what was your feeling of Jameis?
Yeah, so I thought that Jameis was going to be the better option between Jameis and Taysom coming into training camp. I was lucky enough to go and cover training camp. And so while I was there getting the opportunity to watch it, you can just see it, man. Like, you can see the difference in ball velocity and arm strength and arm talent, but then also mechanics was the other portion of it. So that kind of solidified for me seeing it in person that Jameis Winston was very likely going to be the
difference
starter.
Between number one pick and what, I don't even know, was he drafted?
He was undrafted free agent.
Yeah, exactly. Difference between those two. That makes sense.
Yeah. And by the way, shout out to Taysom Hill for being an undrafted free agent who came in out of BYU, drafted or signed to the Green Bay Packers, who let him go. The Saints brought him in. He saw his first NFL snaps. A former quarterback saw his first NFL snaps on special teams and punt coverage. And then 3 years later, he's engaged in a legitimate quarterback battle with a former number one overall selection. You know what I mean? So, like, shout out to Taysom Hill for getting there. But Jameis Winston was the one that made the most sense. And I thought, because I had a lot of people who asked me when Jameis was a free agent before the 2020 season, hey, should the Saints go out and sign Jameis Winston? And my immediate thought was he's antithetical to what Sean Payton likes. Sean Payton doesn't like turnovers. Sean Payton doesn't like risk. That's not what he likes to do. And so I was surprised to see Jameis land in New Orleans in 2020, where he was kind of the third quarterback and then taking the time to, kind of build and learn a little bit and stuff like that. But I thought it was great. So he had a year in the system. It made sense. I thought he was going to be the guy coming into the season.
Awesome. I actually liked it too, because I'm looking at down there in Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians. Yeah, that almost escaped me. But anyway, Bruce Arians' offense just breeds more interceptions. I mean, Tom Brady had like the most interceptions he's had in a decade or something like that. Yeah. And it's like, okay, and it's because of the whole feud of like, hey, Mike Evans is always open. Throw it. I don't care if there's three dudes. Mike Evans always open. Okay, well, I'm going to get more interceptions now because I'm throwing it up to people that actually aren't open. But anyway, I thought it was awesome. Pair him up with Sean Payton. So I thought it was going to be an interesting deal. I don't know if it's worked out yet, but we're going to get into that later. Okay, more on your offseason. You drafted Peyton Turner first round, a couple other draft picks, and I'm going to be full disclosure here. I made fun of this pick. I thought it was hilarious. We were like, they drafted a first round pick that should have been undrafted. Of course, he was like a third round projection. I didn't know it though. And so I just like thought we just went off on this pick. Well, he has more sacks than Chase Young. So how much more can I make fun of this pick than that? So how do you feel about this Peyton Turner pick so far? And did you like it when it happened?
I thought it made sense when it happened. It was not the pick that I thought they were going to go with. Yeah, right. It was not the pick that I thought they were going to go with. I was sitting there going, oh, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, come on down to New Orleans. Like, that's what I was ready for. Then we got the news about JOK and everything, and he's playing phenomenal in Cleveland, which is a great system for him as well. So good for him, and I'm glad for it. But, yeah, that's who I thought the Saints were going to go for. Or one of these other cornerbacks like Tyson Campbell or somebody like that. Eric Stokes, I believe, was still on the board at the time out of Georgia. Those Georgia corners play a lot of man coverage, so I thought maybe that's the route that they would go. But they went with the defensive end. And the reason why it didn't fully surprise me is because I actually kept saying before the draft, I was like, don't be surprised if they go edge rusher. If they wanted to trade up into the top 10 and go after Patrick Surtain, they wanted to go after J.C. Horn. That's what they really, really wanted to do. And they were in talks with the Broncos to get it done, but the Broncos wanted 3 first-round picks.
Oh, okay.
And so New Orleans was like, nah, we're good. We got a quarterback situation we might have to solve in a little bit. They were willing to part with 2, but they were not willing to part with a 3rd one. So it was kind of King's ransom situation. So they ended up backing up, staying where they were, going with best player available, and on their board was Peyton Turner, which, let's be honest, was a player that not a lot of people had heard about. Not a lot of people pay attention to the University of Houston. I happened to stumble across him, I kid you not, 2 weeks before the draft.
Okay.
Deeply into my draft evaluation of players and things like that, when I was kind of going through okay, who have I missed? Who have I not given attention to? And so I thought that he had a lot of tools. He is the New Orleans Saints edge rusher. That's the guy that they like. They like the big, tall, long, powerful guys that could transition speed to power, they want guys. They don't want guys that can win with speed and finesse. They want guys that will push a tackle into the lap of a quarterback, which we actually saw him do 3 times during training camp. And so, he fits exactly what it is that the Saints like in terms of that prototype. So I think it was a good selection for them. And I think he's somebody that's we'll look back 3 years from now when Cam Jordan's no longer around. We'll see what happens with Marcus Davenport over that time. And I expect that Peyton Turner will still be a big part of this defense.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's what you want out of a first-round pick. And as I said, he's doing more than Chase Young. So good for him. All right. Of course, you had some other draft picks. I like the Paulson Adebo pick. You did Pete Warner in the 2nd round. Ian Book. Did you not like Paulson, or did you say you did?
No. Paulson Adebo was he was like my son in the draft. I was like, go get this man. And it was so bad to where when they drafted him, my Twitter mentions blew up because it was they got your guy, which is really cool. I love the community, man. I love the community. Yeah. And as you know, I really like Paulson Adebo because I was like, look, if you can't land somebody in the 1st round, this is a guy with 1st round traits that you can get in the 3rd. And so that was one of the things I looked at. But his draft stock plummeted a little bit because he was he didn't play in 2020. He was an opt-out during the season. His 2019 ended in November of that year with an ankle injury. So it ended a little early, only 9 games in. And so between the time that he played his last game of college football and the time that he played his first NFL game, it was November of 2019 all the way to September of 2021. So nearly 2 full years before
just like Walker Little out of Stanford.
Right.
That left tackle. Yeah. Very similar situation. Cool. And so you think you actually think there might be some hope that Ian Book could be the future here? I personally don't. I did not like him coming out of the draft.
Look,
but
I never put a ceiling on anybody. You know what I mean? And I know that the New Orleans Saints also don't put a ceiling on anybody. That's why I don't put a ceiling on anybody in terms of my evaluation and watching over the team. And so I think that he is somebody that the Saints like a lot. I do think that, Jameis would have to either have a good enough year that he makes a ton of money somewhere else, and the Saints can't find anybody else for Ian Book to really get that shot in New Orleans. But I think that if he did get that shot in New Orleans, it wouldn't surprise anybody. The situation would have to be perfect, right? Jameis would have to go somewhere else or not work out. Taysom would have to go somewhere else or not work out. Then they would probably go to Ian Book if they can't land a big free agent or, land a quarterback in a trade, because we're seeing quarterbacks move a lot more these days than we're used to and stuff like that. So there's always that mobility conversation. So it would have to be the perfect sort of scenario in order for it to be. But I will say that if he gets the opportunity and if the door opens up there for him, then he'll be somebody that you should expect to get at least some conversation there.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, hey, you know what? I'll lay off the criticism. I'm not a Ian Book fan. I'm just not. When I put on the tape, I was just like, okay, I'm not interested in this dude at all. But we'll see how it goes. Yeah. All right. All right. You mentioned it earlier, the Michael Thomas debacle that this has become, but he's about to come back. Apparently, we'll see.
He's about to come back now.
Yeah, we'll see, and hopefully he does for your sake, because your receiving core is god awful. I don't know what you think of it, but I think it's terrible.
It's not been great.
But when it comes to the drama, do you think he purposely didn't do it? Does that come out? I know there was kind of that headline that he may have no, I'm doing it only on company time or something like that. Do you think it was his fault, or do you think there was any fault on this? What was your opinion being in the middle of the Saints media on this whole situation?
Yeah, look, I mean, it was a less than ideal situation. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The Saints wanted that surgery to get done earlier. It did not. Whether it was something that was malicious by Michael Thomas or was just simply oversight, I don't know. And to be completely honest, it kind of doesn't matter at this point because they've had the whole sit down. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And they had the whole sit down. And as Sean Payton said, how did he say it? It wasn't kumbaya is what he told us, but it was, or what he told media. And so it wasn't, one of those things to where all of a sudden, like everything's Gucci and everything's going to be fine moving forward. Like it's still going to take time to sort of figure out what that situation really is. But he's been traveling with the team. He's been visiting with the team. He's been around. He's been doing everything. So he's somebody that they expect will be able to be back pretty soon. He's eligible to return after the bye week, so before the week 7 game against the Seattle Seahawks, which will now be Russ and Wilson less, it sounds like. And so that could be a nice return for New Orleans to have that boost at that time over a Seahawks defense that's been struggling quite a bit. But, there's always the possibility that, yes, he's eligible, but the recovery hasn't really aligned with that timeline for him to be ready. So it might take a little bit more time. I simply don't know at this point. But it seems like the coaches, Coach CJ, who is the Coach Gardner-Johnson, who is the wide receiver coach, said the other day, I think they're both ready to come back now, in reference to Michael Thomas as well as Traquan Smith. So it could be that his recovery is on time and that once he's available, then he should be able to come back. But I do think that he'll get time as soon as he comes back and he'll be on the field and a focal point for sure.
Oh, 100%. Got to be, because as I said, there's nobody else except for Kamara, of course. Kamara's a monster. Love him.
Yeah.
But as far as the receiving core, it's definitely, you could see Jameis Winston only has one game over 200 yards so far. And
just had it on Sunday.
Exactly. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and hop into this roster going into the year. Obviously, Alvin Kamara, absolute monster. You always have a solid O-line. I always like your O-line. Your defense has obviously gotten better since since the past of where Drew Brees had to score 40 points a game or whatever to keep up. But obviously, over the last few years, I think you guys have been usually a top-notch defense, if anything. So that's good. I mentioned the wide receivers. How did you rate this roster coming into the year?
Coming into the year, I was pretty confident about it. Then as all the injuries set in, and then there's all these suspensions too. There's a suspension to David Onyemata that really was a big deal for the interior offensive line interior defensive line. Because now the interior defensive line population is Shy Tuttle, Malcolm Roach, what is his name? Christian Ringo. And so it's, those are your rotation of immediate starters in terms of the top 3, which are a bunch of people that I just said. And a lot of folks just went, who? And, you know him in New Orleans, and you probably know Shy Tuttle as the defensive tackle that picked off and stiff arm Matt Ryan. That great highlight that went all over the place. That's Shy Tuttle. But outside of that, there's not a lot of knowledge of who this defensive interior is. There's not a big identity there. David Onyemata was that identity, and then he got suspended before the season. There is still a suspension that 6 games. Games. So he'll be back for the eligible to return for the week 8 game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is on Halloween in New Orleans, by the way. Phenomenal programming by the NFL. Then there was Deontay Harris, who had an off-season arrest for a DUI. He still hasn't been suspended by that. That might happen later on in the season. That could be something that actually doesn't happen until after the season for the beginning of next season, because it takes time for that to happen. 10 months usually is the time between the arrest to the actual suspension happening in the NFL. It's the average time, at least. And then Marshawn Lattimore had an off-season arrest as well, but then he did baptize Matt Ryan. That's absolutely correct. Marshawn Lattimore had a big one. I didn't see the whole comment. That's so good. But Marshawn Lattimore had an off-season arrest too, but it looks like that's not going to impact his season so far. At least there's a growing suspicion that it won't impact this season. So, that happened, and the injuries and things like that. And I kind of went, okay, this is less than ideal. And so you looked at this roster as being one that still had enough talent, particularly with the coaching that they have available. And that goes to not only the head coach, but also all the assistant coaches, which of course they missed a bunch of in their week 3 loss against their week 2 loss against the Carolina Panthers. And so all of those pieces that kind of, were supposed to be there that weren't there really dropped my expectation of the roster. And so my expectation for this team went from being a full season projection to being like, okay, what's it going to be like in the first 5 games? And I thought of them as a 3-2 team over the first 5 games. And so they're almost there. We'll see if they can get there.
Yep, we'll definitely see. Fair enough. Okay, cool. As far as my team goes, I thought our defense was going to carry this team to the promised land. Like, I mean, I thought we could have, one of the best defenses, competing forever, honestly, because I thought it was going to be interesting. I know we had one huge weakness in John Bostic, but that was about it. And, like, I was like, all right, this team could go the distance as far as just because of defensively. My, oh my, how everyone predicted Washington's defense wrong. It's unbelievable how bad they are. But anyway, and then offensively, I'm like, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, how much can I expect from the offense here? Like, it's luckily he got hurt. I mean, not luckily. I don't know how to say it because I don't want him to play, but I don't wish injuries upon people.
Of course.
Whatever you have to say, I'm glad Taylor Heineke's in the game.
There you go.
But yeah, I thought we were around 500 team coming in. I thought we were going to be maybe 9-8, 8-9, somewhere in there, because of the offensive limitations. Defense could be great, maybe a game or two here. So that's how I saw it coming in.
Yeah, I got to say, like, when I looked at the Washington football team on the schedule for the Saints in the first 5 games, that was the first thing I thought. I was like, man, that is a tough defensive team to go against early on in the season, while this New Orleans Saints team is still going to be trying to find its identity, and the Saints are still very much in that place where they're trying to find their identity with Jameis Winston after, all those injuries and everything like that. And so, but at the same time, the defense for the New Orleans Saints was the strong point for them. I mean, they went from being 17th and 17 and 17th in 2017 to 14th to 11th to top 5 last year. And now they're sitting in the top 7 or at 7th. That probably is the right way to say that. Top 7 isn't a thing, but it's like, hear your top 7 rappers. No one's gonna do that. But you
do when you are the 7th.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And so, it's definitely one of those, situations to where I really expected a lot more from the Washington defense that we've seen so far, but I think they'll get there and they'll turn that on, particularly the pass rush. But it's kind of been all Montez Sweat so far, right? In terms of sack production.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Allen from the interior's had a couple, but obviously Chase does not have a single one. Both of them, I think both of them came on were negated by penalties. I think he's had 2
that sucks.
Technically, but both of them negated by penalties. The one obviously last week from Matt Ryan. I think the other one was a penalty. Maybe that one wasn't a sack. Maybe that was just a QB hit. That was a late hit. I can't remember now off the top of my head. But it's not been good for Chase Young. And we're going to get into that, and I'll give you my opinion on do I think this defense can figure it out. Anyway, so you guys sitting right now 2-2. As apparently you said, you may be 3-2 after week 5. We'll see. But Green Bay, annihilation, right? 38-3, unbelievable game, right?
Did not expect it.
Well, Green Bay always has one of those. Every single year. They have a game where they just absolutely poop the bed. It usually comes in the NFC Championship game, but every single time there's one game that they just absolutely crap themselves, and apparently comes week 1 this year. Right. Carolina then comes in and beats the brakes off you guys, it looks like, at least score-wise. I didn't watch the game. New England, you guys took care of them. Then a horrible upset ticked me off. I hate the Saints now. Losing to the Giants. Everything about losing to the Giants upsets me to the nth degree. Of course, you could let our division guy get their first win. They were 0-3. It was going to be nice to see them 0-4. We're playing you guys the next week. I'm hoping, okay, maybe you guys can have a 2-game win streak. Maybe we can get the upset. Who knows? But now you already got upset, so now it's going to be a tough time to get you twice, right? I mean, everything about, and then you give up the last 17 points of the game. You know that, obviously, but it still ticks me off. And I'm sure it upsets you, but I'm just saying, as an outsider perspective, I have a special interest in that particular game as well, and screw you guys. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so how do you feel about where you're sitting at right now? 2-2. And next game, and theoretically, should be a win if your pattern continues. Ours should be a loss. We're the opposite of you. We lost week 1, won week 2, lost week 3, won week 4. So everything's aligning to where we should get beat this game. But how do you guys feel about your 2-2 start?
Yeah, look, I expected them to start off. I kind of expected a 2-2 start.
Okay.
The thing is that I had everything opposite though. I had the loss to the Packers, the win against the Panthers, the loss to the Patriots, and then the win against the Giants. And
so what you're saying is you got the end right, but you really don't know what you're talking about, is what you're saying. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. I Michael Scotted it, right? Like I worked my way through it until I found a solution, or until I found what I was talking about. but I didn't get there the way I thought I was going to get.
The Office, right?
It's right.
Yeah, my wife loves it. I don't watch it, but my wife loves it.
Oh, gotcha. Right,
I barely got that reference because of that. But no, keep going.
Yeah, so it is a like this loss to the Giants was kind of the one that was like the biggest head scratcher, because the Saints defense played really well for 3 quarters. 199 passing yards allowed, 10 points allowed in the first 3 quarters of the game. Not terrible, not bad at all. And then all of a sudden 203 passing yards, 17 points allowed in the fourth quarter in overtime alone. And that was one possession in overtime. And so it was like, it's just the worst time to sort of have this like stumble, you know what I mean? And so the turntable. And so like that's really what it was. Like that was really the hardest part of it, was that it all just sort of fell apart. And in the first home game, full capacity in New Orleans since January 5th of 2020, 636 days to drop that game in front of the home audience, full capacity. That was huge for the Saints. Like they're upset about that. Like they're very upset about that. And so I think that whole piece of it becomes a part of the evaluation too, in terms of looking ahead to next week. So we're like, they're pretty angry. Like they're pretty angry with themselves. They're pretty upset that they dropped that game. So how does that fuel them going into the following game? So yeah, I mean that's kind of my take on the beginning of the season. It was, the final record is so far as what I expected. They just took a very different path to get there than I had anticipated.
Fair enough. All right, cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and hop into this preview now.
Let's get it.
The first question I like to ask when we do the preview is, I want an outsider's opinion on Washington. When you're coming into this game, how do you view Washington coming in?
Yeah, so for me, the things that I'm looking at are the skill position players for Washington are extremely talented. Now, I know that there's some injuries there. Logan Thomas is going to be out for this game. There's a lot of injuries to the wide receivers and Curtis Samuel and Cam Sims and all these guys that I think are fantastic. De'Ami Brown, yep. Who, like, again, Washington just keeps drafting the guys that I like in the draft. Stop it. Like, De'Ami Brown was another one where I was like, oh, if the Saints could just get him in the 3rd round. And then it was like the Washington football team. I was like, of course. Oh, I'm dealing with a lot of light. Let me swap up a little bit.
It's all good.
And so, so I think that they're really talented at the skill positions for sure. I think Taylor Heineke is a guy that can extend plays. He can be exciting. He can extend drives by, scrambling and getting outside, not necessarily getting outside the pocket, but when that edge rusher takes the wide, non-contained type of bend, he's able to utilize that to pick up a 3rd and short.
I would say that he can get outside the pocket. Yeah. Obviously not like Lamar or Kyler, but I mean, he's had great runs so far. 2 dives for the end zone, a big run in this last game where he got inside the 5. So I mean, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, the mobility is definitely the big thing for him, even though he's not necessarily a top speed guy.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where like I think his pocket mobility as well as his ability to be able to extend plays, they're really, really underrated in terms of what he's able to do. So I think, and that's something that the Saints have struggled against. I mean, they struggled with it a little bit against Daniel Jones. They struggled with it with Sam Darnold, who like was leading the Panthers in rushing touchdowns for a little while and all this stuff. Might have been leading the league in rushing touchdowns actually for a little bit. It was just weird.
Yeah,
but I mean, there's that part for me over on the offensive side. I know the left side of this offensive line is strong for me in terms of like what I've seen from the Washington football team thus far. The right side a little bit weaker in pass protection. Samuel Cosmi, of course, a really good guy out of Texas, if I remember correctly. Really good young rookie, but still a young rookie. And then there's the change at the right guard position with, I think it's Schweitzer that's there now.
Switzer, yep.
Yeah, Switzer. Sorry, thank you.
No, you're good.
And so
honestly, I don't know if I'm saying it right. That's just how I say it.
Yeah, it's so but so I think that side of the line is where Cam Jordan is going to rush from. Cam Jordan has consistently been close all season, but hasn't been able to close anything out. He has no sacks on the year, but he's top 5 in hits, 20 so far in top 20 in pressures. So he's getting there. It's just that he's not finishing the job. So he'll need to be able to do that. And so I think. So that's my sort of take on the entire offense. Talented skill position players, very talented quarterback that can be annoying, quote unquote, and, do the things that you don't expect them to be able to do. And a talented enough offensive line with a fantastic dual threat at running back. And then I look over on the defense and, I want to talk about the front 7 because that's always been the strong point for this Washington football team over the past couple of years. They've been phenomenal up there, but it hasn't been great so far this season. But, there's always... Yeah, well, because there's always the chance that like this is the game that it goes well for them. You know what I mean? Like there's always that portion of it, especially the Saints down a center, down a left tackle with a left guard playing out of, a right guard playing out of position. And so, there's an opportunity there for this defensive line to get rolling against New Orleans, which as a New Orleans Saints fan, you don't want to see. And then but where I think you mentioned the weakness being, Jonathan Bostic, that linebacker spot is something that I think is targetable for New Orleans. They struggled quite a bit. I think it was Landon Collins, it was Bobby McCain, it was Kendall Fuller, it was two linebackers, including Bostic at one point, or not Bostic, excuse me, Jamin Davis, who they took in the first. In the first?
Yep, we took him first.
Yep. Yeah.
19 overall. Yep.
Yeah, so those guys all were in coverage of Cordero Patterson, and Cordero Patterson scores 3 touchdowns in this game because of their ability. Atlanta's ability to move him around. So I'll look for that when it comes to Taysom Hill, and if that's a place where they can kind of move him around in the slot, out wide, in the backfield, all of that, not necessarily utilizing him at quarterback. And so I think that secondary is strong and has great names, but they've struggled so far this season. I think pretty much everyone in the starting secondary has given up a 100+ passer rating so far for Washington. So that's something that I look for as an opportunity for the Saints to get their passing game rolling, but they have to be able to do that.
For sure. And then me looking at the Saints, as I said, I liked Jameis Winston. You guys always have a solid offensive line, so he should be able to get somewhat protected with even though we have a great defensive line. Kamara, I drafted Kamara, or I didn't draft Kamara. I picked up Kamara his rookie year in fantasy because I drafted David Johnson that year, and David Johnson hurt his wrist week 1. And Kamara rode me to the championship. It was great. I was watching a game, and I was in a Yahoo league where there was no waivers, and I was in the middle of watching a Saints game. I was like, this dude is incredible. And I just went and scooped him up, and I was like, yes, sweet. And then I ended up losing the championship because that's what I always do.
But you got there.
I got there. I've lost like the last 5 times I've went or something crazy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But anyway, so obviously I love Kamara. I think he's a stud. I don't know where exactly I put him as far as in the top running backs in the league, but he's up there. He's in the conversation no matter where you can nitpick of, all right, him, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, whatever. He's up there for sure. And then, as I said, defensively, you guys have always been really strong, and you guys kept most of your guys. You said you lost Janoris Jenkins. I remember you losing him because I know he played for the Giants. But outside of that, you still, and then Trey Hendrickson was the guy that went to the Bengals as well. Right. So lost a couple of people because he had a good number of sacks, didn't he? Like 12, 13
and a half last year.
13 sacks. So I know you guys lost them, and then the number one thing for the Saints is Sean Payton. I mean, I think Sean Payton's a phenomenal coach. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I don't know if it was Drew Brees that wrote you, but I know that Sean Payton, he always finds a way to do something a little unorthodox and that kind of gives your team that little bit of edge. So I always like the Saints. The Saints are always good, except when they lost last week. Now I hate the Saints. Saints are my least favorite team.
Right. And thanks for saying that again. I started to forget.
Everybody Saints. Yeah, exactly. No, I will remind you at least 4 more times. No, just kidding. All right. So on to the preview, and you mentioned your injuries. We also had a ton of injuries after this last game.
For the Washington football team. Yeah.
The first 3 weeks we were pretty much unscathed throughout. I mean, maybe like a nicked up here or there, but this week we lost Torrey McIntyre, who actually was playing decent as a third string corner, like comes in for Benjamin St. Juste, but he got hurt on the last play of the game. I think he tore his ACL, and so he's going to be out the rest of the year. John Bostic injured. That's a plus, but again, I don't know, whatever you want to say, because John Bostic, because they've asked about him to Ron Rivera, and Ron Rivera had the audacity to say that John Bostic does not deserve the criticism that he's been getting. No. I was like, this dude is a 30 PFF. Don't talk to me about this guy does not deserve criticism. Like, literally, because he's like, oh yeah, he gets everybody in position. Okay, well, he's never in position. So I don't know why he knows the 10 other guys where they're supposed to be, because he does not know where he's supposed to be. Basically, in coverage, it's crazy. We play zone, and he just immediately vacates his zone. Like, week 1, we're going against the Chargers. It's 3rd and 16. And he's double teaming the flat. Double teaming the flat. Why are you pressing up from out of your zone? And of course, that's where Justin Herbert goes, right where he was supposed to be standing. And it's like, and people are like, oh, why are Bobby McCain playing so far back? well, he's the free safety. He's got to be the last line of defense. Like, the guy that was supposed to be there is John Bostic. Anyway, there's countless times. And then Ron was like, I think he just doesn't deserve the criticism that he be. Went down a notch there, Ron, on my peg there because I was so upset on that one. And anyway, Logan Thomas is going to be out for an extended period of time. They put him on IR. I think he's eligible after 3 weeks to come back, but it's a hamstring. Who knows how long that's going to last. Cam Sims is out. De'Ami Brown is out. We talked about that. Cole Holcomb, one of our best linebackers, even though he hasn't been playing great either, but he's still one of our best ones. He's questionable right now. Curtis Samuel, questionable. Deron Payne, are arguably one of our best, if not the best, interior defensive linemen. He's been great on the inside, getting a lot of pressures. And actually, we talked about it. Apparently, we were like going into this game. I don't know if it's continued. We were top 2 in the league in pressures. But our secondary can't cover a soul. I mean, it's insane. Like, it's just immediate. But anyway, and then I know you mentioned the dual threat running back. Antonio Gibson right now is looking like he's trending not to play. He has a stress fracture in his shin. So apparently he's looking like he's most likely not going to play. So yeah, we are really depleted in many ways. Oh, I didn't even mention Brandon Sheriff, our right guard, arguably our best offensive lineman. He was all pro last year. He's out for 2 to 3 weeks with like something in his. No, this one's a knee. I know he had something in the chest going into the Atlanta game as well. But anyway, what injuries do you guys go into it right now? I didn't look into it so far. But what injuries going in?
Nothing surprising thus far, right? There's all the players that are already on injured reserve, like Quan Alexander and Will Lutz and all these other guys that factor in but haven't been available for the Saints so far this season or haven't been for the past couple of weeks. But the biggest ones that are going to show up in the injury report, of course, are going to be Eric McCoy, who has been out since like the 5th snap of the season. He unfortunately had an early injury. They didn't move him to injured reserve, so it kind of left the door open for an early return. But so far, he hasn't been able to make it back. He won't be in this game. And then Teron Armstead, their starting left tackle, probably the best offensive lineman on their team when healthy. Ryan Ramczyk probably makes an argument there on the opposite side at the other tackle, but
both tackles.
Teron has been, Teron has been absolutely outstanding. And so they were dealing with that. Marshawn Lattimore is going to stay on the injury report until the cast comes off of his hand. He had a thumb surgery that had to get done, a bone chip on his thumb that had to get repaired after the Green Bay game, but he's full participation. He'll be in for this game. And then JT Gray, their star special teamer, who's a big part of their punt coverage in particular. He's outstanding. He was all pro just a couple years ago. From there, he popped up on the injury report, limited on Thursday, but was full participation on Friday, so he'll play. So, in terms of what the injury report reflects, nothing surprising, but still a lot of players unavailable that have been unavailable for some time.
Gotcha. All right. So, yeah, both of us, though, there's definitely some beat-up teams going at it. Lot of people on these injury reports, but we'll see who actually plays. I know he's my co-host, Chris. He's saying that Gibby should be playing. Antonio Gibson is playing apparently this. I don't know. I just saw the report that he had that stress fracture, and I'm like, oh gosh, I hope he doesn't play, but we'll see. Tim didn't give the full detailed description as serious as it made Gibson. Well, okay, sorry. Well, I'm reading what I see here. It says questionable with a stretch fracture and a screw you, Chris. Screw you. No, just kidding. Anyway, all right, cool. So yeah, we'll see how the injuries play out, who actually plays, who doesn't play, but it's definitely going to be hopefully everybody that's questionable suits up for us because we already have enough that's out that could be a problem, but we'll see. All right. What scares you the most? What's the one thing that scares you the most about the Washington football team?
Scary Terry.
Simple. Terry.
He's
such a goat.
Oh my God, he's so good.
He's such a goat.
He's so good.
That dude.
He's so good. He was like my wide receiver 1 in that class, and everybody thought I was crazy because obviously there were fantastic wide receivers in that class. And I'm like, nah, this guy that everybody calls a special teamer from Ohio State that's doing punt gun drills at the Senior Bowl and making highlights off of it, that's wide receiver 1 in this class. And he'll be one of those like feathers in the cap for me for scouting for a while because, man, he's so good. And so I think the matchup between him and also former Buckeye Marshawn Lattimore is a marquee matchup. Last week, the Saints did not have Marshawn Lattimore shadow Kenny Golladay or guard him on both sides of the field, right? Wherever Galladay went, it depended upon whose responsibility it was. So sometimes he was matched up with Adebo, sometimes he was matched up with Lattimore. This week, I think Marshawn Lattimore will very likely shadow and follow Terry McLaurin because he is so dang good.
So good.
So
I think he can be.
He's probably
I've been saying it for a year and a half now. I think he could be Antonio Brown without the crazy. Like, I think he has that much.
He won't dye his
ability.
mustache blonde or nothing like that.
Oh, he's got a great head on his shoulders. I love everything about
man.
Terry.
And he's such a good leader. Like he had that post game speech, that locker room speech that went viral his rookie year, man. Like going out there and immediately taking a leadership role in that team in the turmoil that it was kind of going through, that was under wraps and everything. In the midst of all of that, he still went out there and had, that's a prime opportunity for a young rookie to come in and like be willing to force himself out of a franchise or whatever and do all that ridiculous stuff. And all he did was sit down and say, "This is my team now." And that's so dope.
I love that dude. So great call of what should scare you the most, because I agree. Because it's definitely not the defensive line. Most people would say the defensive line, but no, Scary Terry, great call. And of course, for me, I mentioned Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton deserves to be in this conversation, but obviously Alvin Kamara, what the dual threat for you guys. Okay, so that makes sense. So it's a weapon which is crazy too, going into the season. Nobody would have said it's a weapon on offense that's the scariest out of the Washington football team going in. Even though we've been on this show, and most Skins fans have been on Scary Terry for a while, and people are like saying he's not even, like, I think they didn't even he barely was like a top 20 ranked receiver according to the professionals that rank receivers or something like that. And I'm like, not even
unforgivable.
Close. Unforgivable. Not even close. Like, you've seen 2 years of him, and you still think that he's not, like, barely a top 20 guy. Yeah, I think he's phenomenal. All right, so you kind of touched on it, so I'm going to ask for a different one because you said it was Terry versus Lattimore, but I'm curious because I had a question and I don't want you to repeat yourself. Most interesting matchup going into this game? Oh,
sure. Yeah, I think for me it's going to be Taysom Hill versus the field. So for me, this is a really interesting one because I don't know how much Taysom Hill.
He had 2 rushing touchdowns against the Giants, right?
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
And so I don't know how much Taysom Hill you see at quarterback this week after what happened last week. There's just been a lot of question marks around it. You might see it, you might not. But I think that his ability to be moved around as a chess piece and for Sean Payton to be able to game plan matchups and play the matchups game with Taysom will be something that will be really interesting, particularly in the receiving game. Taysom Hill has been a big time factor in the run game so far this year. And he's thrown 4 passes, only one of them incomplete, which happened to be that interception last week. But I think that it's what's going to be most interesting is going to be how Sean Payton game plans him in terms of matchups in the passing game. Can he get him in the slot matched up with, Kendall Fuller? Can he get him in the slot matched up with Bobby McCain or one of the safeties that he's going to be faster than? Like Landon Collins, the name is still very scary when it comes to Landon Collins, but he's a little bit older now and things like that. And Taysom Hill is extremely athletic. And so can they end up creating those? I think the most intriguing matchup that might come from that will be Taysom Hill against Jamin Davis, because Jamin Davis has all the athleticism in the world to keep up with Taysom Hill. Like there's nothing about the player profile or the athletic profile that gives Taysom Hill an advantage over Jamin Davis. The difference is going to be, has Taysom Hill played this role enough to have a veteran savvy edge over the rookie? That's what's going to be the main thing. And I don't know if that's the case. I really, really don't, because Taysom Hill might have been holding this role for the past 3 years, but it's not like he's out there every single snap, right? So it's really kind of cumulative around what like a second year, maybe still in his first year tight end might actually be. So it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him, but they can put him in line. They can put him out wide. They can put him in the slot. They can put him in the backfield, and they can have him run from the QB spot. That's enough.
And throw from the QB spot.
And throw. Yeah. And so there's enough. Yeah. So there's enough there that there's multiple spaces on the chessboard that they can go with him. And so it'll be interesting to see if Washington is able to keep up.
For sure. We got Chris and Spoiled the Saints fan. Chris, my co-host, who's a big Skins fan. They're going at it. The trash talk begins. Cool. My most interesting matchup, to me, anyway, I don't know if this would be to anybody else, but to me, because it's not really like big names going at it, it's our secondary versus y'all's receivers.
Sure.
We have been pathetic. And as I said, I've already gave my opinion on your receivers.
Yeah.
If we can't shut down this receiving core, Next up, we got who's the next one? I think the next one's Green Bay. Devontae Adams coming in. Yeah. We got Kansas City in a few weeks. We got Tampa Bay. We got Denver with Cortland Sutton and maybe Jerry Jeudy will be back by then. We got some receiving cores. With DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson in Carolina, they're coming to town in the next the next 7 weeks. If we cannot do work against this receiving core, oh my gosh, it's going to be the floodgates. It's going to be so terrible. So, and it's not even only like a talent thing, even though, because I think William Jackson has talent, Kendall Fuller has talent, Benjamin St-Juste coming back from concussion, he has talent.
Right.
But it's play calling. I mean, if I have to watch one more time on 3rd and 3, our corners are lining up 7-8 yards off the ball and backing up off hike. There was one play against Atlanta. All 4 of their receivers were open past the sticks.
Yikes.
All 4. Like, he just picked the one that was right in front of him because it was his first read, because why not? But literally, all 4 are open pass because we're starting so far back and backing up as if we're playing prevent defense in the last play of the game. And Jack Del Rio calls it all the time. I mean, we're just playing so far back. It's like William Jackson, we brought in to be a corner that's a man-to-man guy that's supposed to come up and hit somebody, jam somebody at the line. Like, that's his bread and butter, is man-to-man. We're putting him in zone all the time. Kendall Fuller was supposed to be this great slot receiver or slot corner. He's been getting toasted. Like, even including against Dawson Knox, the great speedster, route-running, tight end, Dawson Knox. Yeah, okay, more like an extra offensive lineman.
In college.
Yeah, exactly. This guy literally getting 5 yards of separation against Kendall Fuller, where our safety, Cameron Curl, is going to end up being he was the closest guy on a particular play. Anyway, there's so much wrong with the secondary that we have got to figure out the secondary situation in this game, because it doesn't get no easier than this matchup right now, because without Michael Thomas, of course, you mentioned Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill might be one of your best weapons out of your receiving core, tight end receiving core, if you want to call it that, outside of Kamara. But, we have got to shut this down. So, anyway, that was my way to plug in how bad our defense has been. Because, as I said, we've been getting pressures.
Right.
And there's still something wrong with Chase Young as far as, Terry has a mindset, because you know this, Terry has a mindset of I'm going to work as hard as I can, and I'm going to get better. I'm going to improve every single day. I don't see the improvement or the steps forward for Chase Young. It's just, it's like he's just still relying that I'm the best player on the field. And it's
you look back at
vanilla.
Yeah. I mean, you look back at, a player that you know very well from the New York Giants with Michael Strahan, right? Michael Strahan to this day will tell you it took him 3 years to learn how to pass rush, how to rush the passer in the NFL, because you had to develop a pass rushing plan and how do you string together moves and all these other things. You can't just rely on natural skill anymore like you can in college, in the NFL. And it maybe Chase Young is figuring that part out. He's learning that part, and then from that he has to learn how to refine his game moving forward. It might take time, but I mean, ideally for y'all it doesn't, you know what I mean? But it might take time,
Yeah, well, it's definitely starting out that way, because it doesn't, I don't know what his I know some things, but I'm not going to go into a whole thing. Anyway, we know that he's just not performing up to snuff that a number 2 overall pick should be doing. All right, here's another matchup that I just had a question. Who wins, Jameis or Heineke? Who has the better day?
Man. Okay, what's the definition of better day might be the interesting part, right? Is it more yards? Is it more touchdowns? Is it less turnovers?
Let's call it QBR, I guess. Who ends up with the best QBR? Okay, in a sense, because that pretty much encompasses the whole ideal, right?
Yeah.
All right, who has the better day? I'm not gonna be my quarterback had way better day, because even though you guys are winning, 35-21, and you guys are just crushing us in the run game, and it's Taylor won the matchup. No, well, he didn't. Right. Jameis didn't need to do anything. But if you guys are offense is cooking, that even if you're running the ball well, the quarterback should be checking plays at the line and helping your run game, maybe switching sides, this or whatever. Because a lot of people said that with Alex Smith. It's our running backs are doing so much better. That's why he's winning games. Well, quarterback's setting it up. Yeah, it's a part of the reason why you're doing that. So anyway, who has the better day, Jameis or Heineke?
Man, I'm gonna go off of what I saw last week, and I'm gonna say Jameis, and it comes down to some improvement in the wide receiver core because at the highlight what you just highlighted is a big thing for the New Orleans Saints offense, this New Orleans Saints team, and I agree. I think it's going to be close between the two of these. First of all, what an incredible story Taylor Heineke is. Incredible story. So like, shout out to him for being in the NFL and for following through with everything that could have been in his way. In this individual matchup, I think that I look at the New Orleans Saints wide receivers and say, if they're going to get right, this is the time to do it. Like if they're going to get right before Michael Thomas comes back, this is the matchup that they need. They had a very nice matchup against against New York last week. And they performed well. I mean, again, performed well from what we have seen from the beginning of the year, right?
It's always compared to something else, right?
Yeah, it has to be, right?
Yep.
And so, look, if you're going to throw 23 passes, if you're only going to throw 23 to 25 passes, you just inherently have the better shot at a better QBR, period. You know what I mean? Less chance for error, all that other stuff. And so I think that, I think you see Jameis go over 200 yards again. I think you see him go over 275 in this one. I don't know if he gets to 300. I know I'm splitting hairs there, but if he even throws an interception, but he comes away with multiple touchdowns, then I think that's a successful day for him. The guy has to be allowed to throw an interception.
Yeah, I heard in your video today. It's the old Jameis Winston. He's all he's going to do is throw interceptions. Yeah, no, I agree with that take. I heard your video earlier.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, but yeah, I do think that would be the thing. And as you mentioned, the Washington secondary has been weak so far this season.
Totally.
The New Orleans Saints secondary has been very good up until the last quarter in a drive. And so I have a hard time with, the whole Waterboy thing. Like, oh no, we suck again. I don't think that's what you're going to see with this New Orleans Saints defense. I don't think they're all of a sudden a bad defense. You know what I mean?
Yep. Fair enough. All right, cool. If I had to pick somebody, I'm rolling with my Heineke. I'm rolling.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I just got to do it. I'm going to roll with Heineke. All right. Give me an offensive player and defensive player on the Saints to kind of look out for. This can be whichever direction you want to go with. You could say maybe it's somebody that's not well known that may step up, or you can go with somebody that you think is just going to have a huge game, and even if it's somebody's known. So you could go either direction, whatever you want to say. But offensive player and defensive player.
Yeah, let me go offense first, and it's going to incorporate special teams a little bit as well. Okay. I sometimes call Locked On Saints Locked On Special Teams because I love my special teams. Okay. But Deontay Harris. Who is probably the Saints' most consistent wide receiver right now, 83.2 PFF grade. I know some people are like, take it or leave it with PFF grades, but it is a metric that you can use to gauge one player's performance over or across another. So while Terry McLaurin, I believe, is the 6th rated wide receiver out of 109 that are qualified, Deontay Harris, I think, is like 7th. And so I think that, it is a big time deal for them to have a good day from Deontay Harris because he's been the most consistent wide receiver for them. He's quick. He is a fantastic route runner. He has continued to develop. He might only be 5'6", 5'7", but he does a really good job working against zone coverage, finding pockets in the zone, things like that. So I would watch him there, but also watch him in the special teams game. The Saints right now over the course of the last 2 years are 10-1 when their average starting field position is their own 30 or better. And so Deontay Harris, as a punt returner, as a kick returner, helps to get those sort of hidden yards that are in the game of football. And I think that he has the opportunity to sort of help flip the field in those moments and help the Saints play with a shorter field on the offensive side, which I think will be a big part.
That little guy, we can't let him get loose.
Can't let him get loose, man. I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, they can use him in the screen game. They can target him downfield. And even though he's a smaller guy, he's effective over the middle of the field and in the intermediate areas as well. On the defensive side, and I almost always say this guy when I get asked this question, but it's because he is oftentimes a key. It's CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Okay.
This dude, number 22, he brings so much energy to the field, and he is somebody that charges this defense up big time and charges, whatever amount of Saints fans might be present. I don't imagine it's going to be a dominantly home field advantage for Washington for sure. But he gets everybody charged up, and the Saints right now are without Quan Alexander, who's usually their spark plug in that way. But CJ Gardner-Johnson still brings that. He'll be somebody to watch, because if the wide receivers are hampered for Washington, that means that they're going to utilize CJ as more of a blitzer off the edge. And he does a very, very good job getting pressure on quarterbacks. He's a great pursuit player. He will take on offensive linemen. He has bulldozed offensive linemen before as a safety. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
He does a really good job winning the leverage game in those situations. And he will take over, a running back that's staying back in coverage, or excuse me, in protection. And so I think that he would be the one that I like to watch a lot over on defense, and that I recommend folks watching.
Sweet, yeah. So Deontay Harris and CJ Gardner-Johnson. Those are your two guys. Sweet. All right. So mine for Washington is actually the same idea on offense. Mr. Deandre Carter. He had the kickoff return, which was a lot of fun. I recommend you go watch the video on my channel. It's only like 2 minutes long or something. But during the live stream, somebody was saying that our offense is scoring too fast. Like, that's why our defense is tired. And that was during halftime, and he takes back the opening kickoff, and I just go off. We scored too fast. Anyway, it's just hilarious. But he also, because of injuries to the wide receivers that we talked about, he had a nice catch, a 24-yard catch towards the end of the game that helped on the game-winning drive. And our offensive coordinator, why can't I think of his name? Scott Turner. Scott Turner mentioned in his press conference that he's actually really excited about DeAndre, and like apparently he had never run that route one time throughout the year, and he's like I don't know if he has, but I know he definitely has it throughout this week. He didn't run it, so he ran a route that apparently got open on the final play or on the final drive. So DeAndre Carter could be actually a guy that kind of has a big impact on this game offensively and, of course, special teams. So similar to your Deontay Harris guy. And then defensively, we haven't mentioned him once. I was going to mention somebody else, but since we haven't brought this guy up because you knew already about Benjamin St. Juste, Cameron Curl, you familiar with him?
Yeah. Well, I know not as familiar as I am with him with Benjamin St. Juste, but I know what position.
So Cameron Curl, our 7th-round pick from 2020, has become arguably our best defensive player. I mean, the guy is phenomenal. And the only weird thing about him is that for some reason we don't play him 100% of the time. We play Landon and Bobby McCain. Like, I think one game Cameron's played more than both of them, but for some reason they play more on the field than this dude. He can shut down tight ends. Like, if he's one-on-one with Taysom Hill, I feel confident with Cam Curl, seriously. Like, because he did a great job last week against Kyle Pitts. I think whoever came in the slot as well, he does a great job with whoever's in that interior tight end slot role that he could come in and play down. And I love Cameron Curl. We love him on this channel. He got arguably snubbed because of name recognition in the Defensive Player of the Year talk. Whenever you thought Washington, you thought Chase Young. If you look at it statistically, I mean, he had 3 interceptions, 88 tackles. He didn't start until week 5. Our defense got noticeably better once Landon Collins was out and Cameron Curl was in the game. He's a great dude in the secondary. So Cam Curl, look for number 31 on our defense because he a lot of times is everywhere because I know Chris likes to say he's doing other people's jobs because nobody else is in position. Cam Curl finds a way to come and makes a play because somebody else is not doing their job. So Cameron Curl is my defense. DeAndre Carter 1 on offense rather, and then you had Deontay Harris and CJ Gardner-Johnson. Okay, so I'll definitely, and it was 22 on defense, you said? All right, sweet. So,
and 11 on offense.
Yeah, I do play-by-play on my channel. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I'll be live during the game, so if you want to stop by and hear, it's like radio-style play-by-play.
Heck yeah, I'll come through.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
I had like 700 live viewers towards the end of the game last week, so I don't know. Apparently people think I'm decent at it.
There you go.
I enjoy
it.
So, all right, cool. Let's go ahead and hop into the 5 keys of victory. I've kept you over an hour. Sorry. I usually try to keep it around an hour. But all we got left is the 5 keys of victory, score prediction, and the rest of the season. So what do we expect the rest of the way? All right, so 5 keys to victory for the Saints to beat Washington. I can go first if you want me to. I have my 5 keys written down. Or I know I've been asking you first the whole time, but it's up to you. What, you want to go first or me first?
Yeah, I'll knock them out.
All right, go for it. 5 keys to victory.
Locked on Saints. I do 6 every week. So it's just
I had a moment where I went off statistically speaking. I think it was like we were talking about Zeke Elliott, And Chris was saying he's washed, and I was like, statistically speaking, he was 9th running back last year in fantasy. Like, yeah, he had a down year for his standards, but he still finished 9th. Anyway, so I went off. Anyway, so that's kind of a meme on our. Statistically speaking, Cameron Curl should have been Defensive Player of the Year over Chase Young. Statistically speaking. Anyway, all right, 5 keys to victory. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, you got it. All right, so I'll start off over on the offensive side. So the first one is going to be the Saints winning on 1st and 2nd downs. Right now, they're one of the teams that throw the least on 1st and 10. They're actually very close to the bottom of the league there, but they're one of the teams that rushes the most on 1st and 10. The issue is that they average only 3.89 yards per carry on 1st and 10. So that puts them in 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8 situations sometimes. Well, in those situations, the Saints also run the most, pass the least, and that creates some issues for them because if they're in 2nd and 9, they're averaging 0.6 yards per carry. If they are in 2nd and 10, then they're averaging a little more around like 2.44 yards per carry. So it creates some issues for them, and it puts them in these 3rd and long situations. Now, that leads me to key number 2, which is converting on 3rd down. Thankfully for the Saints, they're 6th right now. 44.7% of the time they convert those 3rd downs. However, I know that the Washington football team is bottom of the league right now in 3rd down defense, allowing over 56% to be converted. So that is something the Saints are going to have to take advantage of. If you look at the win against Green Bay, you look at the win against New England, in both of those, they had these long double-digit drives, 10, 13, sometimes even 15.
Don't take away my keys of victory, all right?
I'm sorry.
Already talking about 3rd down. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. But they're going to need those. And in order to string those together, they're going to have to be able to convert some of these 3rd downs. And they're doing a good job of it so far, and they have a good advantage here with the Washington football team. Okay, key number 3 for me is going to be I think it's the offensive line. And I know, like saying, oh, well, key to victory is the trenches. Yeah, idiot, of course, I know. But, it's one of those things to where resetting the offensive line in the run game specifically so that it's not Alvin Kamara, Devine Ezigbo, who they had to sign in place of the injured Tony Jones Jr. or Dwayne Washington, having to create on their own. Instead, there's 1 or 2 yards that this offensive line is creating for them ahead of them. That becomes a big part of it. I love it. And then two more over on the defensive side. I think the first one that I'll mention is going to be just getting pressure on Taylor Heineke. He's, his quarterback rating goes from 114.4, if I remember correctly, down to about 77 during that time. His completion percentage goes down, which every quarterback's completion percentage goes down when they're under pressure.
You're statistically speaking right now.
I'm statistically speaking. So they're going to need to be able to take advantage of that and make sure that they're able to do that, but then not over pursue and give him the opportunity to be able to run, because he's also able to do that at a great rate. And then for the Saints defense, the last thing is really just going to be, to me, a key to victory is going to be that matchup between Marshawn Lattimore and Terry McLaurin. I won't go fully into it again, but they're going to have to bracket coverage Terry McLaurin. So you're going to see Marshawn Lattimore on him and then Marcus Williams over the top, very likely, and then maybe even a linebacker paying attention to him in the short and intermediate area until he gets beyond a certain point. So I think that it's just going to be that extra attention to Terry McLaurin, because there's a lot of injuries on this Washington football team, skill positions, as we mentioned, and so the Saints should really focus in on Terry McLaurin, and if they can keep him from having a Kenny Golladay type day like Kenny Golladay had last week, then it helps to sort of balance what the Saints would be able to produce over on the defensive side.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Those are 5 good keys. I like them.
Thanks, man.
All right, here we go. For me, all right, so I have 1 offensively and 4 on the defense. So for one, I'm going to start with the offense, okay?
Sure.
Number 1 is Heineke needs to protect the ball. All right, we don't need to give you guys extra opportunities. And I know he didn't have technically an interception last week, but he threw 3 picks. All 3 were dropped, luckily, but he threw 3 interceptions right in the defender's hands that got dropped. So he's got to do a better job. I know, because he gets a little crazy in the pocket, and then all of a sudden he's just slinging footballs. He's got to get better about protecting the football. So that's number 1.
4.38% turnover worthy plays, if I remember correctly, for Taylor Heineke. So it's a little elevated for him.
Is it? I never heard that stat. So is that a high stat or is it a bad stat? What's average?
That is in the neighborhood of dangerous. I would say. And so, turnover worthy plays would be things that, like, if you throw a pass and it's
no, I understand what it is, but I just never I couldn't tell you what a good number was, and that like is 3% good, 4%.
Yeah, you want to be in the 3% range or lower.
Okay.
Anything lower than 3%, you're not trying. You know what I mean? Like something like good. Every good quarterback is in sort of the 3% range, but 4% or higher is in the neighborhood of like and then 5% bad. You don't.
Okay, I got you. All right, cool. All right, so that's the one offensive thing, and because our offense has played actually pretty decent, so if they just keep doing what they want to do, the defense is my big problem. All right, let's go ahead and hop into the defense. Number one, of course, focus in on Kamara. Let anybody else beat us. Don't let Kamara get loose. I don't care if Taysom Hill has a great day. I don't care if Deontay Harris, like you said, has a great day. If we come in here and let Alvin Kamara go off for 150 yards plus total offense or something like that, we didn't do our job, because that's the key in this matchup. So that's number one. Number three, rather. So number two on the defense. But anyway, number three, man up. We already talked about this. Wide receivers not very good. Will, Jack, Fuller, they need to show up. So we got to screw this zone stuff. Everybody put a hat on a hat, man up, and play some defense. That's going to be a big key to victory. Number three, get a flipping turnover. We haven't had a turnover in 3 weeks. Since week one. The last 3 weeks, we haven't had a single turnover, including freaking Daniel Jones, the turnover king. We couldn't even get one of him on this game. In that game, we did have 2 turnovers that should have been turnovers, but stupid things happened. The whistle blew dead a play.
I hate that.
And I went through and watched it again, and I closed my eyes, and then I paused it as soon as I heard the first whistle. Cole Holcomb already has the ball. He stripped it, hit the ground, picked it up, is now running with it by the time they blew the whistle dead. And then you're like, this
just
isn't even close.
Let the play go and let it go to review. Like, it's automatically going to be reviewed. Like, let everything play out. Like, stop.
You're not even close on that one. And then we have had a turnover on downs earlier, and then we should have had another turnover on downs, but that one did technically get picked off. But I wasn't even happy about that one because it was a 4th down play. Why are you intercepting it 30 yards downfield? You're basically just let them punt. All right? So don't get a turnover in that situation. I'm going to be picky. All right. Just let it be turnover on downs. So anyway, that got it. But we got to get more, or at least one turnover. I mean, we joked about it already. It's Jameis Winston. Get one. Okay, maybe he's not the old Jameis where he gets 3 or 4 in a game. Get one off of Jameis. All right. And the last one, and the most important one, you touched on it in yours, and I wrote down, he's worried about 1st and 2nd down. Ha ha. Like, who cares about 1st and 2nd down? This could be 3rd and 30, and we're shaking in our boots. Literally, there was a 3rd down play last week. It wasn't a very long one, 3rd and 4. Mike Davis caught it 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, broke 4 tackles to get a freaking touchdown.
Oh my god!
4. I mean, you couldn't draw it up any better. Like, he's literally catching it. All you have to do is hit him. Somehow we missed that tackle. There's 2 dudes that he somehow splits, and then Bobby McCain just sucks, and he just missed the tackle. So, for some reason, we're literally, I just wrote this down, 59.68% on 3rd down, good for last in the league, with this great defense. We got to get off the field on 3rd downs. It's not, and I mean, bring it down to 50% at this point. I mean, good grief. Like, against the Chargers, I think we gave up 14 for 19, and then 2 of them that they failed were drop passes. Like, they could have gotten 16 for 19. But anyway, and I think we gave up a 4th down in that one. Anyway, it's just been horrific on 3rd down. So that's got to be a key to victory. Get off the field on 3rd downs. All right. Score predictions. What do you got for your Saints on the score predictions?
This has been a tough one. I've kind of gone back and forth on this one. I think I tend to try to be as, I don't want to be a homer, you know what I mean, and try to pick the Saints on the road. But they're favored here, which I thought was weird, but they're favored here, -2 right now. Which is out of the ordinary for a road team because usually the road team gets 3 points. So there's a 5-point swing at some point there that Vegas is seeing. And, they've got big, pretty buildings, so they know something.
Yep.
But I do think the Saints are going to struggle in this, and or let me not say it that way. I don't think the Saints are just going to come out there and blow the doors off of the Washington football team. That's not going to happen. I think this is going to be a competitive one. I'm going to take the Saints to. I could take the Saints to win or lose this game 24-21. That's sort of the way. Yeah, that's sort of the way that I look at it. And you know, I'll say that I'll take the Saints to win, but I could see them losing the game by the same score because it could come down to trying to tie the game at the end of the game. But then they've got Cody Parkey as their kicker right now. Will Lutz is out. They just moved on from Aldrick Rosas, who was going to go down as the second least accurate New Orleans Saints kicker in history with a.
Don't worry, our kicker's somehow worse.
Yeah, it's all bad. It's all bad. He was like 1 of 4, and he missed 3 straight.
We're not actually not that bad. We hate on Justin Hopkins over here, but
well,
anyway.
Dustin Hopkins, and Will Lutz were the ones that were like immediately in competition for the Saints a few years.
Yeah, that was a few years ago before we got him. I wish you kept him.
Yep. Fortunately for the Saints, Will Lutz is in the building, but I think that will be the score. I don't know if the Saints win or lose. Like it is that much of a high variance team right now, but I think it's close.
Gotcha. Just to answer this guy's question, what's up, Blitz? He said, do you like Heineke or Fitz better under center? It's not even a competition for me. I like Heineke better. Heineke just brings that mobility, the second option there. Fitz obviously has the more experience, but at the same time, his experience still leads to crazy interceptions that he shouldn't be throwing. So what good is it if you have all that experience and you're still throwing a ton of interceptions? So anyway, Heineke for me. All right, I am also taking y'all, and as I said, I may have been able to take us if you guys beat the stupid Giants, but you guys are going to be mad. You guys are going to be upset.
I think that's a big part of it, too.
And honestly, it's just, I have it 27-20, but because also, like, our defense isn't holding anybody under 20. It's just stupid right now. But I got 27-20, y'all, and I like Heineke. As I said, I think he throws some dangerous passes. You said it was 4.38%. That's interesting. I didn't look up the stat. I just watched the film, so I knew that he throws too many dangerous passes, little crazy passes. One of them, like, in particular, like, he's trying to force it into Terry, and he's trying to, like, look off the safety, but the safety's job was, I'm guarding Terry. Anybody else can get open, and so he never moved off of Terry, and he just came back and just slung it anyway. Should have been picked off. Luckily not. Anyway, so you know, I hope that Marshawn Lattimore doesn't get one, or somebody else in your secondary. You said Gardner-Johnson or maybe Marcus Williams. Like, hopefully somebody does not come away with an interception. But I have us losing 27-20, but I'm going to be rooting for him. And as I always say on my channel, because I like to be somewhat of a realist, I'm always happy to be wrong when I'm picking against us.
There you go. Real quick, sorry, I gave you the wrong stat there. Not 4.38, my bad, 4.08.
4.08. Okay.
4.08. Okay. Yeah, that's why it's like in the ballpark of dangerous, but it's not like detrimental at this point.
Okay, fair enough. I may have heard it wrong. It may have been my fault.
No, I think I said 4.3.
Okay. Just kidding. I never get things wrong. So it was definitely your fault.
Attitude of a true analyst right there.
All right, let's hop into so what is your season predictions / expectations for the Saints going on through the rest of the year? Looking at your schedule, you seem like to have an up and down schedule as far as like tough games, easy games, tough games, easy games, in my opinion anyway. So where do you think the Saints could end up the rest of this year? Like a season record prediction, and like where do you think they're going to end up?
Yeah, I've pretty consistently kept the Saints around like 9-7, 10 and sorry. No, that's not the number anymore.
9-8, 10-7.
Or 10-7. There we go. Got it. That's kind of where I've had them, and I still think that that's possible for New Orleans. I think that this next 7-game stretch after the bye week is really, really tough. Really, really tough for them. I mean, it might have just gotten a little bit simpler with Seattle, but it's still the Seahawks in Seattle, so they're still going to be a good team. I mean, like let's not fool ourselves here.
But so it's two strong games. Even if let's say Russell was playing, it's 2 strong games, but then it's followed by 3 not that hard games. I mean, we'll see what Tennessee looks like in week 10, but Atlanta, Philadelphia, I don't think is very good. Well,
Atlanta, well, the thing about those two for me is that Atlanta is a division game for the Saints, and you know how those goes. Like those could always be kind of weird. And then, look, the Saints went to Philly last year and dropped the game. And so they've
which is more reason to hate the Saints.
just losing all across the NFC East for you. It'll be something else. I can't wait to hear back from you if like the Saints lose to every NFC East opponent except for us, the Washington football team. I can't wait to have that conversation. But yeah, so I still think the Saints are there, and you know, I think that like the bye week gives them a really strong reset, and then all these star players that come back are playing a 12-game season effectively, as opposed to a 17-game season. So the additional game doesn't really like bother too much. So I think that becomes a part of my expectation as well.
All right, cool. So you said between 9-8 and 9-7.
Yeah, it's like 9-8, 10-7. It's in that, you know, one of those two for me.
All right, cool. Very interesting. For us, this is the quote-unquote last, like, if you want to call it, and I wouldn't even call it this, but quote-unquote last, like, easy game.
Sure.
But even though it's not really easy, but it's just like you had your injuries like you talked about, Jameis Winston still getting used to it. Your receiving core is not very good. After this, like, we had the second, before last week, I don't know what it is now, before last week we had the second hardest schedule the rest of the way.
Wow.
Yeah, and because look at this stretch. Just hear this. Chiefs, Packers, Broncos, Buccaneers, Panthers, Seahawks, which might be easier now, Raiders, Dallas, and then we finished with 4 division games.
Jeez.
Yeah, was there a single one, except I guess now the Seahawks, but let's just say it was Russell Wilson, like a single one that you're looking at that's like, oh yeah, you should be a favorite in that game maybe, or like a good shot to win that game.
Yeah, it's a shame because like at the beginning of the season, you might have been like, Carolina is looking like they're, you know, that's not gonna be a big deal. Like Sam Darnold, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden now they're like fantastic.
We've actually been hip on Carolina down here on this channel, to be honest.
That's good.
Not that we've been hip on every single team, but yeah, Carolina, we've been following through because they drafted some guys that we wanted, like Deontay Brown, the guard. I don't know how he's looking, but Tommy Trimble is a guy that I wanted. J.C. Horn was great. But yeah, so we've been hip on Carolina for a little bit now, but because Ron Rivera just coming from there, so we've been following them a little bit closer. But anyway, but yes, but to your point, it's like, okay, maybe that's not the hardest game on the schedule, but now they're 3-1, and they just lost to, I think, Dallas. I just put them in my top 5 power rank. I think what puts Dallas puts them over top for me is they finally got competent leadership at the defensive coordinator spot.
Yep.
And like maybe they're not the most talented defense in the world, but Dan Quinn knows how to play defense.
Yep.
And that's all he has to focus on. He's not the head coach anymore of Atlanta. Like this is going to be dangerous. Just like little things like, okay, Micah Parsons, he's struggling at linebacker. I'm putting him at the defensive end then.
Yep.
Let me move him over to something that he's good at.
Yep.
Like, we're over here like, John Bostic sucks, so let's put him on every 3rd and long. You know? Like, why?
Right.
Why? Or Landon Collins, you know, he's more of a box safety. Let's play him at free. Let's see how he does back there with 20 yards.
That has been wild to me to watch. That has been wild to me to watch, just to watch him that far off the line of scrimmage when he's so good in the box.
Yeah, it's just insane. And it seems like, you know, like he can't tackle if it's a pass play. If it's a run play, he can get in there on the run. But for some reason, when the ball's thrown, nope. I lose my ability to tackle.
Space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it's a screen pass, it was just thrown. And it's, anyway, if it's a throw, it's just he seems to struggle. No, it's not that bad with Landon. But at the same time, it's just everything feels that bad right now with how pathetic this defense has been. But all right, awesome. Well, that's a show. Thank you so much for hanging out. I know it kept you a little over an hour, but appreciate you stopping on through. Thanks for, and I completely understand. You would think that Twitter DMs would give some sort of notification, but it seems like it gives nothing to people. So I try to like tweet at them to see maybe if that helps or something. But anyway, but thanks for responding. Thanks for coming on, and I had fun with this. Hopefully you did too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, it was a pleasure to be here. Love being able to jump on people's shows and be able to chat and everything. So I just appreciate you having me on. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. All right, cool. And thanks for everybody for being here. Badis Fatfa. Zach Plays Games was here the whole time. What's up, Yuki? I don't think anybody else had like questions or anything that I saw. Mostly just comments on what we've been talking about. But thanks for everybody for putting comments in there. And we will be back for the play-by-play on Sunday at 1 o'clock for this game. So stop on through. Anyway, and until next time. See ya!